Sometimes we find that we have to move a plant from one area in the landscape to another. Perhaps it outgrew the space we had originally planned for it, or we have a construction project that's going to get in the way. Plants can easily be moved from one place to another, but you want to plan ahead. The best time to transplant trees and shrubs is in the early spring, after the ground thaws but before the buds break, or in the fall just after the leaves drop from the plant. Now, when we transplant, we're going to be leaving a substantial portion of the root system behind, and this can cause transplant shock. Moving your plant at the proper time of year will help reduce this shock, and also root pruning is going to help. I'm going to demonstrate root pruning for you now. Before we started, we went ahead and tied up the branches of our tree that we're going to be root pruning. This will help us prevent any damage because it's a draping, this is a Japanese maple, and it was draping out. So we want to start by marking a circle around the base of the tree. This is going to be the final root ball that we're going to be moving with our tree here. A general rule of thumb is to prepare a root ball that's 1 foot in diameter for every inch of the tree diameter, the trunk diameter. We have a little over 2 inches, so we have about 28 inches here marked. And then root pruning, what root pruning is going to do is the roots right now are spread well beyond the canopy of the tree. And when we root prune, we're going to cut the roots and encourage the growth of new roots in this area directly beneath the canopy. Root pruning is done about in the spring or fall before you transplant the tree. Now you want to use a sharp spade to dig around the edge of the circle. What we're doing is we're cutting the roots as we go. As you can see, I have the blade pointing away from the plant. This is going to allow us to make a cut into the roots without pulling them up. We don't want to pry up any of the roots that are supposed to be inside the root ball. Make sure your spade is nice and sharp so that you can make a clean cut. You will want to avoid tearing the roots as much as possible. And then go ahead and just cut this all the way around the outside, digging a small trench as you go until we get a nice circle completed. You want to keep digging until you have a trench all the way around the outside of your tree. This is going to let you get in and root prune a little deeper. This soil ball for something this size probably needs to be about 18, 20 inches deep. So it's going to let us cut some of those deeper roots. You can see some of the roots that we've cut here. Sometimes they break off nice and clean like that. If you have a jagged tear, you want to go ahead and cut those so that they have a clean edge. Once you get done digging your trench, you're going to fill it back in with the soil that you just picked up and then water it into place. If you've tied your plant, go ahead and cut that off until you're ready to transplant. This is the site of our planting. We recently lost a willow that stood sentinel over our Japanese tea ceremony garden, so we decided to replace it with the Japanese maple. Another aspect of being prepared for transplanting is to prepare the planting site ahead of time. You want to be able to replant your dug tree or shrub as quickly as possible. So make sure that your site is prepared before you even begin digging your tree or shrub. The general guidelines are going to be similar to if you were planting a container grown tree from a nursery. In general, you want the planting hole to be as deep as the root ball and 2 to 3 times as wide, just to give you an idea how big our hole is here. Now, if you have heavy clay soils, you could go ahead and score along the edges. This is going to give the roots a place to grab and establish. Now by creating this nice big opening, you're going to give the tree or shrub a lot of room to establish its roots. So the research shows that the majority of roots actually spread laterally and not down. So make a nice big hole to give your plant a good start. You could get more tips on site preparation in fact sheet 6414, Planting Trees and Shrubs. We have our planting hole dug and we're ready to lift our tree. Before we get started, there's a few things we want to remember. You're going to want to tie up the foliage, the branches, so that you don't break anything when you're moving it. Now, if you were paying close attention earlier, you might remember that I mentioned we move the tree after the leaves drop or early in the spring. And obviously my plant here has plenty of leaves on it. When you work in a public garden, you don't always get to work under ideal conditions, and we're operating by another schedule. So we're going to have to give our tree a lot of extra attention after we move it, especially with water. I'm going to use just a bandana to mark the north side of the tree. When you replant, you want to keep it in the same orientation that it was where you're lifting the tree from. So use a rope or something else to go ahead and mark it. Okay, I already started excavating around the tree. You want to start by digging about a foot out from where you had root pruned earlier. We had root pruned about this far. So we're going to dig a trench out around. When you're digging close to the tree, you want to remember, or close to the root ball, you want to remember to have the blade of your shovel facing outward so that you make a nice clean slice into any of the roots there. We're going to go ahead and taper the root ball down as we dig so we have a narrower ball at the bottom. I have a few people here to help me out. This is quite a big project I have here. It's going to take a few people to lift this. If you have a really large plant that you want to move, this is can get really heavy. Just a 15 by 15 root ball can weigh up to 200 pounds. So if it looks like you have a big project, you're going to want to get some help or maybe even hire a professional to move it. Okay, so we were able to wrap our root ball in burlap, and with a little bit of muscle, we'll be able to lift it up out of this hole. All right, let's give it a shot. As you set your root ball, remember that you want the top of the root ball to be level with the surrounding soil. So, remove our burlap here. And, there we go. You want to cut away as much of the burlap as possible. There's mixed theories about that, but the burlap can restrict root growth. So it's a good idea to go ahead and cut it out as much as you can. It's all right to leave some underneath. We're not going to be able to get that out. Also, if the burlap is exposed up above the ground, it acts as a wick and can dry out the soil beneath. I'm going to go ahead and cut off our rope that we had binding the tree. I want to make sure that we have this tree weeps, and we want to make sure that it's weeping in the right direction. We have our tree positioned how we want it, so we're going to go ahead and backfill the soil in. Remember to make sure that the tree's not planted too deep, or else it's going to be stressed out. Once you have your tree in place, you want to go ahead and water it in really well. We've created kind of a ring around here, a little depressed area. This is a good idea to have the water collect here around the trunk. So you see how we have kind of a donut shape around our trunk. You don't want to mound the soil up like a volcano next to the trunk. Also remember to set the tree so that the crown is level with the soil. This tree had been planted a little too deep before. You could see how far up the trunk the soil was. It should be a little bit healthier in this new position. It's also a good idea to mulch around your tree to help maintain soil moisture. You're going to need to water your transplanted tree or shrub regularly until it's established. A good soaking every 10 to 14 days is usually adequate, but you also don't want to overwater. If your soils are poorly drained like these clays, you want to check to see if the moisture, if the soil's dried out. Dig down about 3 inches into the soil and check. If it's wet down there, hold off on watering for a while. Not all trees and shrubs are going to transplant very well. It's a good idea to do a little bit of research beforehand. And planning is also going to give you the greatest success, allowing you to root prune and prepare your plant for transplanting.